It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with my co-host,
Barnet Bain. Good moment, everyone.
Good moment.
Good moment. I want to share something that occurred. I tried for it again today. Sometimes
I tried for it. I like that.
I reached for it again today, so I'm going to thread backwards.
All right.
Yesterday, I'm driving up PCH. It's a gorgeous sort of gray, drizzly kind of Southern California, rare Southern California day. And I got a little hissy here going on in my phones. Okay, let me fix that.
Yep.
And I have this feeling, and I look up and over, and I see a whale breaching.
Oh, wow,
So
nice.
wonderful. I'm having the inner firework thing going. I'm feeling warm and fuzzy.
I love it.
It's a marine land moment.
A marine
And now I'm driving again. I'm driving a few minutes later, a few miles later, I have the same feeling. I look over. There's a couple more.
Nice.
I drive. A little while later, I look over. Now there's like a pod of dolphins.
Mm.
And a little while later, I look over, and there's nothing. And I look again, and then there's a seal. It's like a consolation prize.
Wait a minute. I wouldn't create a hierarchy here. One is not better than the other. Dolphins and seals and whales are all equal in our world.
It's good. In the world of animal toxology, I appreciate that we're politically correct, even here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. But there are whales and there are seals.
All right.
So
Fair enough.
I'm allowing myself to become enthused over the seal. It's a relative deprivation. I went from whales to pods to seals. But I thought, wow, there's some fascinating inner connection there between some sort of dial-in between my enthusiasm and excitement and some frequency carrier of enthusiasm and excitement. And somehow we are separate and yet connected. And so I have this sort of extraordinary experience. I called it, and I wrote it down, I called it breaking the spell of the logical narrative. It really has nothing to do with how I have strung together all of my assumptions about the way the world operates.
So now, let me be clear. So are you talking about...
This is for clarity's sake, folks. I want to see this.
No kidding. Well, forget about clarity. Let me just ask some questions.
That's better.
Let's probe.
Yeah, don't make any promises.
Yeah, we may not get clear here. I'm wondering if you're talking about the impulse to look up and to notice versus, hunkering down and staying committed to getting to wherever the heck you were going.
Probably both ends. The sensitivity to, through my commitment, through my focus, to hear a different signal of some kind and to be willing to respond to it.
Right.
But there is some sort of relationship. I don't know that it's a cause and effect kind of thing. It's probably some sort of much more mysterious simultaneity that occurs. But there is some relationship between my capacity to tune into this event.
Yes. And what it means.
And my willingness to respond to it.
Yeah. So why did you have the experience, and what does it mean? How are you organizing it? And is it... So
that's above my pay grade, all of that.
Well, marveling at nature, is this beautiful reflection of ourselves in a way that I don't know any other way to tap in from a frequency standpoint, other than nature brings me deeply into a sense of my own connectedness and possibility and so forth and so on, which I sense is what you're talking about, this ability to be with, like, wow, how marvelous to be able to experience, be a witness to, and a participant with the whales migrating.
That's a part of what I'm speaking to. The other part is...
Well, be clear, man.
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
That sounds like it's time for a break. So we spoke a few weeks ago about Indra's net.
Oh, yeah, I love that. That's fantastic.
Indra, a Hindu god who had this wonderful net.
And that stretched on to infinity.
An infinite net, and where the webbing of the net wove together, tied into each of those
connections
connections was a pearl, a gem. and that pearl reflected every other pearl in the net. And so it is this wonderful image of this holographic reality that that I'm not. Some say that this is, that's the nature of our world. I'm just saying, we don't need to get calls, but there is this wonderful image there of our separateness and yet interconnectedness that happens in this mysterious simultaneity, and this kind of event with my brothers, the whales, I think is an evidence of that.
Yeah, and the quality of experience for me, again, going back to nature and my ability to marvel at something, the marveling, the awe, the kind of wondrous experience of, perfect moments. I said that language before, the magical moments, like, wow. I love when I am taken by a moment, and just enamored and enthralled, and all the juices you were saying, and the inspiration that's coming up, and the aliveness in it. And I think,
do you have a license to be this exuberant?
This is a good question, because in our world, I got fired off. You were here this morning when I was talking about discretionary effort, and I won't get myself in trouble here at the station.
We're going to get in trouble with the management. We're on an even keel
I'm just
here.
aware of
we just got our own parking spots.
how restricted I see my world getting reflected back in this kind of discretionary effort I see. And the opposite of that would be really marveling at, an expansive perception and filtering of our world, where these moments open up, and where the inspiration and the celebration.
Well, this sounds like as good a point as any to expand the celebration. Shall we?
Why not? I think
Why
you should.
not? I mean, we're going to do it, right? Eventually, we might as well bite the bullet and do it now.
sounds painful.
It does sound painful, but it only hurts for a moment. Then it's really good. It's really good. So I want to welcome my friend who has been described as the father. We're not going to go too much farther into that afterwards, but the father of the human potential movement.
Yeah.
He's Michael Murphy. He's the co-founder of the Esalen Institute in Big Sur. He's the author of many books, including Golf in the Kingdom, one of my faves, Jacob Adabit, and The Future of the Body. I actually schlepped it into the studio because we have cameras in the studio.
Book.
And I wanted people to see what I go through. See this thing? You can get a hernia carrying this thing around. It's like 7 pounds, but I do that for my friends. Michael, I'm so glad you're with us this morning.
Welcome, Michael.
I'm hypnotized.
That's beautiful. Next time, can you write a book that's a little thinner? Because Barnett's having a really tough time being a loyal friend to you.
I just want to, do you have this on an MP3 file?
Who's the guest here? Barnett, are you the guest? Am I the guest? Who's the guest?
You know what? I can never tell. Who's picking up the check?
I'm the guest.
I neglected to say in your intro
Yeah.
that Michael Murphy is also the one who is responsible for introducing me to the pleasures of single malt whiskey.
Oh, fantastic.
So
You're
he
the guy that
traipsed
did
me
that.
through the Highlands one summer.
And you, Barnett, are the person who gave me the extraordinary pleasure of by introducing me to your wife.
We're gonna open that one this early.
I've never met in my life.
She's extraordinary, isn't she?
You know, I
Yes,
just wanted you
I'm
to
back
see.
on the whales
Well,
now.
we wanted to set the bar,
Yeah.
and it's a high bar. That is as exciting an experience, frankly, as being alert to the passage of whales.
Yeah.
Now you are.
Barnett, was it you or Freeman who saw the whale?
I saw the whales.
No, it's Barnett that saw the whales.
I saw the whales.
Barnett, you saw the whales. Can I ask you a question?
Please.
All right. I want you to really, if you can, say the first thing that comes to your mind, okay? Okay?
Yep.
All right. Did the whale say anything to you?
The whale did not say anything to me, but the whale conveyed in me arose a very powerful feeling of excitement and connection and wonder.
Yeah.
So that is I realize a whole other octave of communication.
See,
so
the
whale
first thing that
clearly
came
did
to mind,
say something.
yeah. So the first thing that came to mind was just yes. Did the whale say something to you? What Michael's asking you, and my first response, I wasn't there, but
my editors will tell you that unfortunately, if I could answer anything with one word, life would be really much better all around.
Yeah.
And those of us who are friends with him will attest to that, right, Michael?
Michael's not going to say. Michael's the one who wrote. Let me just.
1,200 pages.
Yeah, it's just like 1,000-page thing here. So, which could have been a Cliff Notes.
Well, this, is going to be the most marvelous stretch of prose since Finnegan's Wake if we keep up like this. But I have a friend who photographs whales and swims in alongside. There was a big picture, a big spread on him up here in the San Francisco newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And he has gotten filled lately with an enormous amount of inner talk that he wonders, that he can't understand, and has it come from this coming in close to these whales for months now. It's gotten under his skin. He's convinced that they were trying to communicate, and so anyway, that could have happened. You could have had just a short burst. They saw you out of one eye, Barnett. I don't know what they saw, but they were so astonished they said something. Maybe to get to work or something, but whatever. So.
What you're bringing up, which you've pursued, Michael, in a very direct way, is possibilities beyond what we're going to call normal. So your career and your, I don't know, life's mission, vocation, I mean, it's an all-in thing. Creating Esalen changed the world and continues to change the world, my world, because you were interested back in, I don't know, Esalen's been around for over 50 years, so a while ago, with possibility. And that, of course, is what this show is all about. So when you say talking with whales, in this dialogue, that's very normal. And I love the idea that your friends talk with whales. To me...
Well, I only have one friend who actually does it.
Well, you need to find more people.
Michael, you need to get out more.
Barnett, there are all sorts of people who come to Esalen who say they've talked to whales. Well, one of the central missions of Esalen for 50 years, believe it or not, has been to sort out the woo-woo from the true marvel.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And, living in California, we are, we're all vaccinated by now against the woo-woo because, we grow up with it out here. This is the most experimental place in terms of rethinking human nature, probably on the planet. Mm-hmm. And, of course, we argue, is it more in Northern California or down where you guys live? But
we have our own versions of it, our own flavors.
That's right. We are, all of us are like the weather. Up here, we're breezy. Down here, you guys are balmy. I mean,
there's a little more rigor, I think, up north, the farther north you go.
Up here in the north.
Yeah.
But anyway, in any case, this sorting out, is a huge thing, and it's been going on at Esalen for half a century now. And, we've gotten a gang together. There are about 40 of us now who are in constant connection, like those whales, on email. And we meet once a year, and we have pursued the agenda that was really established by William James, the father of American psychology, back in the late 19th century, and what he called radical empiricism. Mm-hmm. That is, let's look at everything, because that is what science is supposed to do. You look at everything, but people will normalize their experience and get caught, and scientists are no better than everyone else in that regard. You get kind of in a groove, and pretty soon you will not allow in the anomalous, the out-of-the-box phenomena. So anyway, this gang has been sorting things out, first around what's the evidence for survival of bodily death. So we've been meeting for 15 years. There's a big book out people can buy called Irreducible Mind. It's aimed mainly at graduate students and young professors in neuroscience and psychology and religious studies, etc. But now we're coming out with a second book. But the point I want to make is that these 40 of us, all of whom are really, really tough guys and girls, I mean, academics and research scientists that, around the United States, about 4 or 5 of us, live in England and a few in France. But so this is a new, hot conversation, and it's morphing as we speak, and it's getting into things like you guys apparently discuss on this program. It's Barnet. It's a kind of second stage of the Esalen rocket. I mean, we were launched 50 years ago and helped engender, all sorts of things, as you know. And this is like a second stage of the rocket, and that's something we might talk about.
Well, I'd like to talk about that because science has had a tradition of being fairly dug in against all of what Esalen is exploring. So you're beginning to make a distinction between science and scientism.
I think we should talk about it, but I think we should talk about it
Let's
after the break.
sell some cars.
Sell some cars. So we need to take a break. Here's what we're going to do, because I want to come back, and Barnet and I both want to explore this further. So we're going to do that. So stay with us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Thank you for staying with us. This is Barnet Bain. I'm here with Freeman Michaels and our guest, Michael Murphy. So before the break, Michael, you were about to head down a very interesting road. Freeman, you want to...
Well, no, where we're sort of aiming, and I love what, Michael, you said about how we distinguish between woo-woo and something and something that's really innovative. We've talked about this on this show before, is sometimes the whole seeker, which we all know that sort of mode of being the seeker, which is so valuable, until you realize it's become its own distraction and the seeker never becomes the finder. I mean, at what point are we off trail, in a constructive way? And what point are we off trail in a destructive way? And Barnet, you were talking about science versus scientism. I can't even say that word. I'm not sure it's a word, but are we so identified with trying to find an empirical reason for something that we lose the mystery?
We love structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, there's nothing more central now in those fields that are inquiring into who are we, Alfie? Where are we going? What's it all about? In the 18th century with Voltaire and Diderot, the whole French Enlightenment, to toss out the superstitions of the Middle Ages, Europe and America, led the way in the modernity and science to sweep away all of those, superstitious and dogmatic beliefs of the past so that science could be born. But science, in turn, threw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's just simplify it like that.
Well, I'm not sure those folks didn't do the same thing in trying to sweep out the superstitious. They got the mystics into the dustpan too, and then we lost the mysticism.
That's true. That's what I mean. That's when science arose, it cut too deep.
Right.
It cut off the fat and it cut into the muscle. It took away things. So we've now, at Esalen, that was the mission with which we were born, to raise a flag for what William James called radical empiricism. Let's look again at all of this that was cast out. And we were influenced by Aldous Huxley and Abraham Maslow and Paul Tillich and others who were leading this way. Mm-hmm. And what we did was help open a Pandora's box of enormous incursion of stuff that was new to America. When Esalen started 50 years ago, there were maybe 40 or 50 yoga studios in the United States. Mm-hmm. Now there are 20,000. Mm-hmm. My parents were shocked that their star student had become a, quote, yogi. They thought a yogi was somebody who laid down on a bed of nails,
Right.
So now, in Salinas, where I was born, the lettuce capital of the world, the Salinas Rodeo. A lot of tough guys there. It's got yoga studios. It has Buddhist meditation centers, and these have spread all through the United States. Now, alongside of that came, so far, 6,000 published studies on meditation research. What is the brain actually doing when you meditate? 6,000 studies. In 1962, at that point, only about 75 had been published. So this great expansion has happened. But at the same time, you've had this tidal wave of crazy claims that has given the field often a very bad name.
Absolutely.
And so now we want to sort this out. Now, it's sorting it out not just for respectability, but to get at the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's start with the whole question of survival of bodily death.
Mm-hmm.
The religions contradict each other. The Judeo-Christian heritage has it that we have one life. And if you get things wrong on this life, you burn in hell for eternity. I mean, there are still fundamentalist Christian sects who are teaching that. Boy, you got one chance. Well, you know, so the secular world has just tossed all of that out. And okay, so now come the beliefs in reincarnation. But I don't know if you know this, but there are several dozen different views of how reincarnation works. Within the Buddhist community, many of the most elite and smartest Buddhist teachers that I know do not believe in reincarnation. They don't believe that there's a soul that reincarnates. Indeed, they have a doctrine of no soul. We're just right here, and the job of meditation is to release from our present ego-bound state into enlightenment. Okay, the Tibetans who do believe in reincarnation have many different versions of it. So anyway, we began this inquiry at Esalen with the recognition that there are several dozen views of the afterlife. But what is going on? What is going on? Can you get at it empirically? We believe that you can, and we've published this big book called Irreducible Mind by Kelly and Company. This is the leaders of our fellowship, and they're at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville. And so William James and Company believe that Stanford and Harvard both had major endowments. Stanford from the founder's brother to do psychical research. Both of these were eliminated before World War I when the whole psychology rose up and threw out all of this agenda that William James had started. So in any case, back to the woo-woo. We now and many others are trying to start again to sort out what we can know and what we can learn about from the woo-woo and also from these radically different claims that come out of the religion. So that's a great task that's opening up right now. It actually has not really been publicized. You're not going to get articles about this from a larger cultural history point of view in the New York Times or the Los Angeles
Well,
Times.
it's considered intellectually dubious to begin with, but I want to. You mentioned you mentioned this Stanford, and you personally arise from a very particular lineage that passes through Stanford. Some 50 years ago, you took a trip as a callow youth to India, and you wound up on the ashram of Sri Aurobindo, and something extraordinary happened. You experienced a profound transformation. I would love you to share with our listeners something of that.
Well, this is what, Barnett, what set me off. I was at Stanford as an undergraduate. I was 19, and I walked by mistake into the class of Friedrich Spiegelberg, who was a great professor from Germany of comparative religion. And I was just a sophomore, and anyway, it was by mistake. I was in the classroom, and it bowled me over. I heard him in that first lecture from the Vedic hymns say the word Brahman, and then half an hour later, Atman, which is Brahman. And I walked back to my fraternity with a sentence going through my head: I'm never going to be the same again. I stayed in the class. One thing led to another. I dropped out of pre-med, dropped out of my fraternity, and went into the direction that led me to start Esalen. But the main inspiration, Barnett, was Sri Aurobindo, an Indian thinker who had been the first great Indian leader well before Gandhi to call for complete freedom. He'd been jailed by the British, educated in England, and knew 12 languages, was a classic scholar. So he brought a Western education with an Indian sensibility and a depth of realization. He was a realized mystic. He and gave birth to an evolutionary vision of the world that turned me on and led to me starting Esalen.
He changed the world in the West through you. But I would love you to speak a little bit of your experience. Go back 50 years. Your first experience with a realized mystic. What is from the inside out? Wales may or may not have spoken to me, but Sri Aurobindo was in a dialogue with you, and I'd like to hear a little bit about
Well,
that.
it was internal dialogue, Barnett.
Yeah.
He died in 1950. I was actually in Spiegelberg's class when I came back for my junior year at Stanford when he came in and announced that Aurobindo had died. So the influence was indirect. I didn't go to the ashram over there till I was 25. I lived there for a year and a half. But to tell you true, I, was on fire right away with this from the start, and started to meditate, and it built and built until I started having experiences where I didn't have to say I believed in these things anymore. I have to say to this day, I know that these dimensions are there, not, I believe, because I have any stupendous contemplative gift, but because I was so on fire and meditated so much. I was literally sitting, Barnett, 8 hours a day. Here I was 19 and 20 with all this energy. And, just by the luck of the Irish, you start having these peak moments, and then when they happen, they're wildly...
When Michael speaks of the luck of the Irish, folks, it's personal.
Well, I'm just saying,
Well, we like to...
Perseverance further.
Yeah, we like to think of them as sort of happy accidents. The idea, of course, that you landed in that class is on one level a mystery, and on one level no mystery at all, because it all, of course, makes sense. And the notion of a glimpse of possibility, the vision that you followed, the fire that was lit that still burns today, is powerful. I want to track back to something that you began to talk about, specifically reincarnation, because we had a show where Bruce Lipton, who I'm sure you probably know personally, came on, and we had a crazy... You remember that conversation with Bruce? That was one of my favorite shows. And it's interesting listening back to, because I felt like I was lost during most of the show, but it was brilliant because he was talking about the frequency and how we exist as frequencies that extend before our birth, after our death, and represent us like it's a dialing in of convergence of energies that represent who we are. Anyhow, I won't go further into that because it's Bruce's material, and I, again, still don't totally understand it. But I dug it. I dug it much in the same way you dug the dialogue that you walked into the middle of when you were, 19 years old.
And you got lit.
So there was something true in what Bruce was talking about that I could say, wow, that's true. Again, that same sort of knowing without having it, not totally comprehending what I know. I mean, there's this following of some intuition. I mean, to stay in a dialogue that you've had, again, for 15 years, a dialogue, not because you've got an answer, but because the question's compelling enough.
Because he's in love.
In love with possibility.
He's in love with the exploration.
Yes.
He's in love with the mystery. Well, all of a sudden I'm speaking to you in the third person. But
well, this is Freeman, Barnett. Absolutely, you guys are both right on there. We are led often by a knowing that you could call borders on faith, but it's a secret knowing. It's what drives us. But I have had this side to me of wanting to anchor it in sustained experience, but also in a body of facts that can help persuade the world to get aligned to its truest and deepest destiny.
I love that.
And, Islam, that word, really means surrender to the divine.
mm-hmm.
And that is at the core of all the great faiths. But the problem is that all of these political faiths and all of this ethical control comes in to blur the picture. John Cleese has become a very good friend, Monty Python.
Yes, yours and mine.
Yeah.
We made a film together.
Well, his definition of religion, 3% is alignment with God, and the other 97% is crowd control. So
I love that line. That is great.
Okay, so look at the Middle East.
Yeah.
Look at jihad. This is killing each other in the name of God. This is giving God a very bad name.
That's a pretty profound distortion.
Well, it's a complete corruption.
Yeah.
An absolute corruption of the word jihad. It's a 180-degree corruption to go out and kill people in the name. For what purpose? Okay. So our effort, and I think what we're all trying to do, is to cleanse the doors of perception, to quote Blake, so that we can see things as they are, infinite. I mean, to open up the undiscovered country.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what our effort to do is to go beyond intuition and faith and anchor this in a massive body of data that reasonable people, if they will enter into this domain, can recognize and get guidance from. And if I could have 1 minute to offer a gift to your listeners, that is to
our listeners love presents.
Yeah, we take presents very seriously
and
around
checks.
here.
They like checks,
I'm going to
Michael.
give you a present right now, and that is that the whole question of reincarnation has been opened up by Ian Stevenson. Do you know that name?
No,
I
but
do not.
We need to get him on the show.
Well, he's dead. Ian Stevenson.
Even better. That would be a bigger coup.
We'll get Vin Prague to come in and have a conversation with
Right.
him.
He, over a course of 50 years, with his colleagues, with heavy funding, developed 2,600 case studies of children who remember a past life, and you go out and find a life that matches it. You remember Bridie Murphy way back when, years ago?
Yeah.
Well, it's like that, 2,600 cases. It was endowed by Chester Carlson, who invented Xerox. There's an ironic thing. Anyway, Xerox.
You couldn't make that up.
No, that's too good.
That one up, but it's true. And anyway, at the University of Virginia, this is under the medical school there, and there are about 7 professionals there who are part of this fellowship that has been gathered at Esalen and through Esalen to promote this. And in the middle of it are the people who have those 2,600 case studies, and they are being analyzed. Now, it's interesting that in these cases, a huge percentage, 700 or 800 of these kids were born with a deformity or a birthmark that they related to a violent accident in a life that was lived just a few, they died in the previous life a few years before the birth. Now, so you couldn't have gotten to this, randomly unless there's some meaning in that high statistic. And so what I've done myself is read through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these case studies. Now, I need to tell you guys this story because here's the gift. I came in agnostic. I have never been agnostic about our oneness with God, if you want to put it that way, or Atman is Brahman, or the Buddha's claim that there is such a thing as enlightenment. I've never been agnostic about that, but I remained agnostic about reincarnation. So as I started reading these case studies and seeing photographs, for example, one kid was born with a line of purple spots they're called purpura, if you know, from his left shoulder down across his torso to
Wow.
his right hip.
Wow.
7 of them. And
Michael, we want to give our audience, we want our audience to hear the end of that before we go to a hard break. So, jump forward so that we can, so that they can feel a sense of closure on this issue, on this story.
All right,
We don't want to leave them hanging.
all right, so I'm looking at the photographs of that kid, and then photographs of a man in Turkey who was actually machine gunned. So you can compare the photographs, and this kid remembered the name.
Wow.
Okay, now I look at that and I say to myself, oh, that's a marvelous coincidence. So there are 10 of these.
Wow. So if, for our listeners, who think that is an incredible story, that is only one moment of the experience of wandering alone through Michael's library, and I've had the pleasure of doing that. And there are drawer after drawer after drawer after drawer of thousands of these kinds of things. It is just amazing. But we have come to a hard break, and we want to thank you, Michael, for joining us today on Cutting Edge Consciousness. This was really, really exciting, and there's a whole lot for us to listen to and to go back to again and again on the podcast as well. We are going to go off and take care of some messages, and we will be right back with Cutting Edge Consciousness. And thank you, Michael. Hang on the line. I just want to say goodbye to you during the break.
And stay tuned.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain. Just got done talking with Michael Murphy, the co-founder of Esalen Institute in California.
And one of the more loving human beings on the planet.
Sweetheart.
So great. But I want to wrap up that story that
please.
he started, because we were up against that hard break, and boy, they're tough. Those are tough calls to make. But fortunately, I happen to know how that ended. Michael, for years, would say he was an agnostic on so many matters, including reincarnation. I'm an agnostic. But then after looking and reviewing and reading thousands and thousands of these documented cases that were put together in Ian Stevenson's great work, his wife said to him, Michael, you just keep saying this. It's a knee-jerk. You're a liar around this issue.
Right.
And he took the big gulp. And the next time somebody asked him where he stood on this matter, he said, well, I'm a believer, which proves that even the sweetest old Irish dogs can learn new tricks.
What I love is the spirit of staying open until it's time to sort of commit and say.
Well, what courage that is.
Yeah.
It takes a particular courage to stand your ground and fight for a particular point of view, not a position. A point of view, and then be willing to let it go in an instant.
That's the key point. It's so interesting. What was really...
That makes him a gentleman and a scholar.
He is. He really is. And what strikes me about the entire Esalen conversation is, he made a commitment. Something stirred in him. Again, we've used the language in love with possibility. Something was stirred in him that he was willing to pursue at all costs, because really the risk involved in the Esalen history and history to date, because Esalen has not been a smooth ride. It's had a lot of ups and downs. The whole creating of it was I won't tell the backstory, but it's a fascinating backstory about his grandmother and the land and how he ended up convincing her to allow him to create this place. And they were doing something that had never been done before. Mm-hmm. And they were not doing something that had never been done before in a small way. They were doing it in a way
They were pioneers.
and not just pioneers once or twice,
Over and
pioneers over and over. You know, here's, and this is not to pat ourselves in the back, but the impetus for this show, when Barnet and I met nearly 3 years ago, and I said, I've got this show called Cutting Edge Consciousness, I want it to be yada, 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 and we arrived at the intention, which was to go off trail. We said, we want to play at our edge. And so many times in the 3 years, it hasn't made sense. Like, what are we doing? Like, we've had so many gut checks. Like, what is this? You know, we don't really know what this is, but we keep coming back to this fundamental inclination to do it because there's stuff in it that we know is valuable. And you know, I just think of that because this has been one of the greatest gifts of my life, doing this show, and still is, right? And again, in the way I've organized my life, you know, the context of how I've made a lot of decisions, this may not fit. Though it fits more and more because I'm committed to this element of not knowing and just honoring what's good and valuable and true that I do know, not as a outward expression, but as a quality of experience. That guiding principle, which fundamentally has guided Michael and his other you know, collaborators in creating Esalen, becomes a gift. And I pray that my gift can be as gracious as the gift that Esalen has been to all of humanity.
And it's fun.
And it's fun.
I mean, that's been a fun ride.
Yeah.
That has been a fun ride. People are glamorized, you know, by Abraham Maslow and Fritz Perls, and then, you know, they just glamorize things.
Huxley.
They don't so much aware that the doorman, the guy who manned the gatehouse in the middle of the night for a while, was Hunter S. Thompson.
I know, I love that story.
With a shotgun.
Though he made a mess of the place.
He
Joan Baez was down there. I mean, the history, folks,
story?
of Esalen is unbelievable. I mean, it's
unbelievable.
You know what, Barnet Bain? Someone ought to make a movie about
Well, you know, I was quite a long way down the road to doing that.
Oh, you were? I didn't know that.
With something that used to be called the Wisdom Network.
Oh, yeah, I
Wisdom
remember
Media,
this.
And we were doing that.
Yeah.
And then the company was bought by Steve Case at AOL, and they were no longer in the scripted film business, and so it fell by the wayside. But one day the time will come for that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, again, you know, I am often in awe of the tradition that I slipped into. You know, I mean, I'm part of it now because we're blazing our own trail for whatever it is. But that it has this rich tradition of so many remarkable human beings that we're willing to not know. We're willing to explore something with no guarantee of, you know, anything other than just the hope and the love.
Wow, sounds
of
like
the
us.
inquiry.
You're making my. The impact of that is twofold. There's a part of me that is thrilled at hearing that. There's another part of me that is like stiffening, like, oh my God, what are we doing
know.
and where are we going?
I know. It's magical. I mean, you know, I want to go back to the beginning of the conversation because, you know,
With Michael?
Yeah, because this line that he was drawing, and it's not a hard line, it's a fuzzy line between woo-woo and wow-wow, as you like to say it, between seeking and finding, between, you know, distraction, something that becomes a distraction, and something that becomes a clarifier, you know, on the right-hand side, sort of, you know, I'm seeing it as sort of right-hand side of the page, constructive, and left-hand side of the page, let's say destructive, and how, you know, all of this line, this very thin line, this very precarious line that we're always walking, at least you and I are. I mean, you know, because you can't know this. You can't order and organize and pre-program it, you know, to be something. The whole nature of being over the edge or outside of our frame of reference is you can't know. The nature of an innovation is it's something that you can't possibly know right now.
Something that reveals itself.
It has to. You know, otherwise it wouldn't be innovative. It's outside of what's known.
It requires a sufficient self-knowing.
That's it.
To be able to recognize what is characteristic of the self and what is old and of patterns of identity and personality. And you have to be familiarly intimate with that in order to put the clutch in on it.
Yep.
and be open to discovery and revelation.
Yeah. So we don't know what the outcome is. We don't really know where we're going, but we have hints, and we have tracking devices.
We have whale talk.
We have whale talk.
And I don't mean that facetiously.
No, I think you're right. Or we have a
This whole gigantic 7-pound tome, The Future of the Body by Michael Murphy. Explorations into the further evolution of human nature. It is from stem to stern about these extraordinary capacities.
Right.
And he alluded to a few of them with respect to reincarnation and the work of Ian Stevenson, but there is this massive, massive book that I urge any of our listeners who are drawn to further exploring these matters. All of this stuff is beyond logic and beyond linear thinking. And he compiles it all, and it is, it's appended with all sorts of scholarly inquiry around it, and it's done with such an open mind and an open heart. It's rigorous, and yet it does not push back on what cannot be explained and with what is currently known.
And what I like about it is, and what I like about Michael's work in general, is it comes from every angle. They've done so many revolutionary things at Esalen, it's impossible to cover all of them. But just how the culture, the nature of the dialogue, the nature of the inquiry it's truly collaborative. It brings in everyone they can think of. I mean, I love some of these dialogues where they've had all these religious leaders, specifically around various crises. There was a crisis with Iran a number of years back where they drew on various church leaders and got everyone into dialogue, out of which came a protocol, a way of handling this that's been very helpful in not having that political situation erupt. And that kind of what's the word? It's so innovative. It's so, but they're willing to take on anything. That's my sense of Michael and Esalen and the entire community there is just bring them something that's complex and tricky and hard to manage, and they'll handle it in the sense that they're willing to bring in any voice, try anything new. It's powerful.
It's also
premise.
Such a beautiful place. I mean, speaking very practically, for any of you who have had the pleasure of visiting there, you know what I'm speaking about. It is so beautiful. It is a place where the earth so dramatically loves herself. It's so stunning.
Yeah.
And the gardens are so stunning, and the food is so stunning, and the baths are so stunning. It's just, and I'm very excited to be headed up there the beginning of June for the Esalen Film Festival.
It's fantastic. No, again, we've sort of used language of the energetic frequency. I mean, maybe the language is a vortex, a place where, again, where nature as a resource to tap into, to source information, right? The source element. Clearly, that's part of what's in the water, as it were. What's going on up there.
The resource element.
Resource. Oh, that's really
Ain't
great.
the source.
I
But it's a
love that.
repeater station.
It's a repeater station. It's an amplifier.
Place where there's sufficient focused human energy, committed and dedicated to a particular discovery, a particular humility, so heart's open, and you can feel it.
That is good stuff. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure what our timeline looks like.
Well, we have 2 minutes. So in the last 2 minutes...
Do you want to show pictures of your dog?
I love my dog. My little dog, for those of you who don't know, found me. Almost literally showed up on my doorstep. I was coming home from a walk and actually showed up on our doorstep because it was such a collective finding of this little creature that's an extension of so much of the heart of our family. She's at the heart of our family now. We found her under a car a few doors down, and we all arrived at one moment, my kids, my wife, everyone, and this dog was there, little what was presumably a white dog, but it was covered in soot. And so we got it out, and it smelled like urine. And so we washed it, and then we brought it to the local animal shelter, to see if it had a chip and see if someone was going to claim it, if there was someone looking for it. And they have a whole network of way they put out that there's a found dog. So we did, but they said to us, if you'd like, after 7 days, to adopt the dog, because we don't want to see the dog put down, you can do that. And I said, okay, great. So I was showing up every day to see if the dog was still there. And now little Gracie, we call her Grace, is a huge part of our family. She's just a little lover, and she sits on my chest at night and licks my face, and I just giggle, and my kids giggle, and she's a little source of love. And talk about a frequency, man, that dog. Every time I'm stressed out, I just
dogs do that.
pick
Animals
her
do
up,
that.
and she just
I'm
grounds
not aware
me.
of any work explored at Esalen around animals. I'm
So
going to have to discuss
we'll have
that.
to do that, and we actually probably need to do an animal show because you're a big dog lover. You have
I have a memory.
a memory of a love affair with a
I
little,
had
a
a
little
dog
poodle.
for 19 years. Well, we don't say he's a poodle even after life.
You're in
I told him he
denial
was.
of that.
I told him he was a Mexican sheepdog, and
You went for that.
nobody messed with him.
That's beautiful. So, well, yes, for those of you who know a good resource for a dog, or an animal show, I should say, animal frequencies or animal, because we know it's out there. It's just not something
Well,
we've
maybe
done.
we'll get Cesar on Milan.
Oh, let's do that. That's exactly who we should get on. All right.
and some Great Danes.
He'll bring them for sure in studio.
We'll have live in conversation with some Great Danes. There's Isak Denison. We could get her.
Yeah, now we're starting to think. All right, so listen, it's coming. And for those of you who have tuned in today, we want to thank you. And we invite you, of course, to share this with friends and to keep coming
For
back.
more information
yes.
about the Esalen Institute, www.esalen.org. And also you can check in with us at our www.cuttingedgeconsciousness.com website. And for more information there, thank you. We'll see you next week.